Right, so recently on the channel we announced that we would no longer be watching or covering modern day National Wrestling Alliance, aka Billy Corgan's NWA, on the channel anymore. Big whoop, I know, but for the channel it kind of is, you know. I've reviewed and watched NWA for so many years now when there's not really a lot of other content creators that are doing that. And I've been a fan of the NWA. I was definitely someone who would have labeled myself as a big fan of the company, especially during the first season of NWA Powerrr, which I genuinely believe is one of the best weekly wrestling products in a long while. NWA Powerrr Season 1 was great, we'll talk more about that later though. I also think that Season 2 and their return after the pandemic didn't produce some bad stuff either. I thought it was pretty okay, obviously up until like Tyrus won the belt. And it's been a turbulent few years with them losing stars and changing channels and just making horrible booking decisions along the way. I followed it all on the channel, but also I'm someone that wants to see the NWA get better because, as I said, I was a fan of the NWA and it's just sad to see the downfall of it. And yeah, after a few years of just kind of the same stuff from the NWA, it became clear that this product is just never going to get better, it's going to keep getting worse and keep spiraling it, and so what's really the point of following along with it, because I'm just straight up not enjoying it. Obviously, to reiterate, I'm making an NWA video right now, so you're probably like, wait, I thought you said you'd stop. Yes, I said I'd stop covering modern weekly shows for the company. I'll still talk about the NWA here and there as a company and talk about it retrospectively though. And so I thought to follow on from my last video discussing modern day NWA, I'd really delve deep into what are really the biggest problems I had with Billy Corgan's NWA following the product for as many years as I did when nobody else really was. So yeah, we've got 5 things to go through, 5 things on my list, 5 points as to why I stopped watching the NWA and what I really believe are the biggest problems with the NWA that are probably never gonna get fixed or solved. So like the video and let's get straight into the first item on the list. One of NWA's biggest things that has held them back over the years is the lack of a proper broadcaster or a good broadcasting deal. When NWA Powerrr first started, it was on YouTube, and this was the right decision for the time. It meant it got as much exposure as possible, it meant it was accessible, and it got the company off to a hot start with NWA Powerrr and the new era they were entering. I'm sure the ad revenue wasn't too bad either. I'm not sure if it was profitable or not, but I'm sure it was good for the time, especially the viewers they were getting at this time on NWA Powerrr. But I feel like since this, they've never really been able to find a broadcaster that suits them. As when the pandemic took place, they of course went off the air, and when they did return about a year later, they would be back on Fight TV, where you had to pay a monthly subscription to keep up with the NWA. I think they even ended up removing all their content off of YouTube and putting it onto the Triller TV library, which wasn't the worst deal. It wasn't bad for about $5 a month, not the worst place to be, but obviously you want somewhere greater than that in the next media rights deal. This is more like a placeholder one, right? Well, they must have had some issues finding another broadcaster, or maybe numbers on Triller TV/Fight TV were low, because they would then go back to YouTube. It started off as a deal where it would first air on Triller TV, then air on YouTube for free a couple of days later, but then it just ended up being exclusively back on YouTube, and they even introduced a secondary show, NWA USA, which was also a weekly show on YouTube as well, and also died a really quick death as view counts on that really dropped quick. And it became clear that YouTube just wasn't going to be a long-term broadcaster for them, as once again YouTube really should have been a placeholder deal for them before they went on to an even greater one, but they ended up just lasting there for a while. And the views weren't bad. I'm sure the ad revenue wasn't the worst either. Once again though, not sure how profitable it could have been, and there definitely was a downward trend with the viewing numbers. But in late 2023 there would be rumblings that NWA would finally be getting the big TV broadcasting deal they were after, as they were rumored to be in negotiations with the CW network. You know, the channel that aired The Flash and Arrow and stuff like that. Yeah, a cable TV channel with good outreach that had never delved into professional wrestling before. A really good deal for the NWA if they were able to get it over the line properly, which they weren't, and I'll explain why. The story that went around at the time is that they were set and slated to appear on the CW TV channel itself, but then, how do I put it, the Father James Mitchell Booger Sugar incident took place. CW officials were apparently very unhappy with this, and the deal ended up being changed so that NWA wouldn't air on the CW channel, but rather the CW app. A huge L and a huge misstep from the NWA if it is true, as there was also word that apparently CW didn't really care about the NWA to begin with, and the only reason it was on there was because CW wanted a Billy Corgan documentary series, but Corgan wanted NWA included in the deal, so it just came to that. And you could tell CW didn't really care either, because they hardly ever promoted the NWA on their social media channels, and even on the app itself you had to properly search for it to find it. And then just about 6 months into NWA's CW deal, NXT, the WWE developmental show, would then debut on the network on TV itself, as NWA was just unceremoniously removed from the library. And yeah, this deal really just ended up doing nothing for anyone. It was an app that hardly anybody used to begin with, nobody was probably watching it or knew what was going on, and it really didn't seem like CW cared for NWA in the slightest whatsoever. And also another knock-on effect of the CW app deal with the NWA that still affects them now is now NWA no longer has pay-per-view events traditionally. They'd advertise big events like Hard Times and Sohane like their pay-per-view events that you can go attend, but really these matches are filmed and split into multiple episodes of NWA Powerrr, and it makes it even harder to follow, and there is just no incentive to keep up. Yeah, that's one thing I've just begged NWA to change for the last year. Please bring back regular pay-per-views. They probably weren't making money, I'm sure that's probably a big reason why they stopped doing it, because not many people were probably buying them, but it's way better to consume a pay-per-view like that than across multiple episodes of a weekly non-consequential show. But yeah, after they were off the CW app, they were just back in broadcaster limbo once again, and that's when they made their way onto X/Twitter, and that's where NWA Powerrr would air for a bit, which I will give to them. It made NWA a lot more accessible and easier to watch and follow along. But obviously there was absolutely no way they were making any money doing this, just no way. And that brings us to where we are now, as NWA now airs on the Roku channel, which as far as I'm aware, don't quote me, I'm British, I don't live in the States, only a select few people with a certain TV device even have access to this channel. And following along and keeping up with the NWA product is harder than ever, and that's definitely a big reason as to why I'm no longer watching it and doing it for the channel, because it's just so difficult to keep up. And this Roku channel deal has came with its own hiccups and difficulties and challenges as well, as there was one week where NWA Powerrr just didn't even air at the time it was supposed to. They just forgot to press play on it or something. But yeah, that's the turbulent history of NWA's broadcasting deals. I really did yap on there, but it makes it so hard to follow in the company when it's hopping from channel to channel, most of which are unknown and really hard to access. This is a problem that TNA had for many years when they went to like Destination America, then they went to Pursuit, then they went to Access TV, that's the one they're on right now. Bloody hell, it really made TNA hard to follow, which is why the AMC deal upcoming for TNA is a really big deal, and the CW deal for NWA would have been absolutely huge for them, but they allegedly fumbled it with some booger sugar. There is definitely something to be said about the NWA roster and how it has definitely been downgraded and depleted over the years. However, it's something that I find hard to criticize any smaller company for, because that's not something that's exclusive to just one smaller company. This goes not just for NWA, but also TNA or any other independent wrestling company out there. MLW as well are always going to be at risk of WWE or AEW signing one of their talents, and there's just not really anything they can do to keep them. NWA have definitely lost a lot of talent over the years to the bigger companies. Obviously Camille springs to mind as one of them, as well as Thunder Rosa too. Eli Drake, Eddie Kingston, Ricky Starks, these are all names springing to mind that were poached by WWE or AEW, and I can't really criticize NWA for losing them because it's just business. It's the wrestler's choice at the end of the day. They're obviously going to go with the better and bigger offer. The problem I have with the NWA roster is that these big stars that they lose, they very much fail to replace in any meaningful way. I feel as though the NWA have really failed to utilize the free agency pool and a list of unsigned talents all over the independent wrestling scene that they don't really use on their roster, and these are people who could probably benefit the NWA in some way, but instead the NWA has opted for most of their roster to be homegrown guys who you probably wouldn't really know outside of the NWA, which there's nothing wrong with having a homegrown roster, but it's not really going to grow the company in any way. You need established names, you need people who are going to mix it up and do things differently to what you usually see in the NWA. NWA used to always get a lot of like the old 2008 roster members of WWE. That used to be a big meme that they were in SVR 2008 roster, and I don't think that was a bad thing. I think it was good to have recognizable names on there. You can tune into an NWA show and be like, oh hey, that's that random ruthless aggression guy I remember. But even that has been kind of totally phased out. We don't see Chris Masters on the show anymore. We don't see Mr. Anderson. We don't see Colt Cabana. We don't see anyone like that. But hey, actually, sometimes you do see names like that. Sometimes you'll get an actually impressive and good name for the NWA to bring in that just come in for a cup of coffee and then are gone after 1 or 2 matches and didn't really achieve or do anything for the NWA. Shotzi Blackheart came in recently for the NWA. That's a great addition. Shotzi is awesome. She went and challenged for the NWA Women's World Title belt, which, first of all, don't really know how she earned that, but who cares? It's Shotzi, it's a big star. But then she lost the match and hasn't been seen or heard from or mentioned since in the NWA, and it just begs the question, what has that actually done for the product? You've had someone who didn't earn the title shot just come in and randomly challenge for it after not appearing on TV prior to build it up. And that's not Shotzi's fault, you know, they should have booked her, but then when she loses, you'd think they could do a redemption storyline or have something continue on with them, and it's just like, nah, they're just forgotten about, they're just a random special attraction match that kinda doesn't even feel like canon anymore or like it mattered. They did have Matt Cardona come in recently, and it looks like he was gonna do stuff with the world title, but now he's been picked back up by the WWE. I can't really blame the NWA for that one, it's just unlucky. But yeah, you see these names like the Good Brothers are coming in, and Duke Hudson, the former Chase U guy, was on NWA recently as well, and they just last a week or two and then they're gone and it just doesn't really matter at all. It's like, hey, nice to see you, bye. And yeah, the NWA roster is in this weird place where it's a lot of NWA guys who you've not really been given a reason to care for or been explained their characters in any way, mixed with these good names that are coming in just to work 1 or 2 dates and then piss back off again, and it just doesn't really do anything for the company or make for good product or good TV. So yeah, I can't blame NWA for losing a lot of their guys that got signed to TV companies, but I can blame them for not utilizing the list of free agents and unsigned wrestlers that are available to them, because they could really bolster their roster, but they seemingly just rather take the safe route. I think there's a lot to say about the NWA World Heavyweight Championship and how this belt has been absolutely massacred from top to bottom since Nick Aldis lost it and left the company. I'm not going to harp on Nick Aldis for too long in his NWA run because I've spoken about it countless times. It can easily go down as one of the biggest factors of NWA's downfall was losing Nick Aldis. He was the NWA. He had that historic feud with Cody Rhodes for the NWA World Title belt, with Cody Rhodes winning it at All In what was a hugely acclaimed and huge match outside of WWE. It literally started AEW, you could say, and he would win it back off Cody Rhodes and go on to hold it for about a year or two before losing it to Trevor Murdoch of all people. You see where the SVR 2008 allegations come from? Now at this time I will say Trevor Murdoch had actually been built up in the NWA main event as a big babyface, so the fans were actually happy to see Trevor Murdoch win it, but people were also expecting a big Trevor Murdoch Nick Aldis feud to go on, but of course Nick Aldis and the NWA, their relationship blew up, so now Trevor Murdoch, it was nice to see him as a champion I guess, but who the hell is going to challenge this guy? The NWA would actually bring in Matt Cardona, who would win the belt off him I believe, which was a really good move from the NWA, but it was very unlucky because Cardona got injured pretty soon after and had to vacate the belt, and then Tyrus would end up winning the NWA World Championship, which we all know about. One of the worst moves and worst decisions that the NWA has straight up ever made. Nick Aldis leaving in my eyes can definitely be looked at as one of the biggest reasons that NWA had their downfall, but one that is not too close up there is also this: Tyrus winning the world title belt. If you didn't tune out after Nick Aldis left, then you were definitely tuning out here. And I'll reiterate what I've said in all my videos discussing Tyrus in the NWA. The issue isn't even Tyrus's politics or what you think of him or what you disagree with him on. The issue was that Tyrus could barely move or function as a professional wrestler. It was an embarrassment and just such a downgrade. EC3 would win the belt after Tyrus, which I think was a really good move from the NWA, and EC3 is a good name for the NWA to have on their roster and as the world champion, but the damage was totally done by that point. Nobody was watching the NWA anymore because Tyrus had been the champion for over a year. And EC3 also had the same issue as Trevor Murdoch, as who the hell is going to challenge him? He ended up feuding with Tom Latimer for what felt like forever, with Latimer of course winning it, and then Tom Latimer didn't really do anything with the belt other than cut backstage promos and have random title defenses against random people nobody cared about. And Tom Latimer recently lost the belt to Thrill Billy Silas Mason, which I think was also a pretty good move. Good to have a homegrown star winning the belt, but once again, the damage has been totally done, and the prestige in this world title belt is just totally gone now. It just can't be overstated enough how much Nick Aldis really did do for the image of that belt. It was looked at as a prestigious belt once again after decades because of what Aldis and Cody Rhodes did with it. All just to hand it to fucking Tyrus and just kill the belt and all the work that was done for it instantly. Just dumb. So yeah, the fourth point here is just to talk about NWA Powerrr as a show and how it is nowadays, and there's just no witty or funny way for me to even put this. It's just a shitty wrestling show. It just sucks. Straight up, it sucks ass. The shows feel totally inconsequential, like they don't matter, and like there is literally no reason to watch or follow along with it. There was nothing appealing about NWA nowadays. The matches are bad and usually short and often have happened hundreds of times already, especially in the tag division. It's the same tag teams fighting over and over again in the exact same match as before. And there's so many belts as well. Why? The show is 40 minutes long every week. Why do we have so many belts here? We don't even do pay-per-views to get these on a full card anymore. I just think the glory days of NWA Powerrr are so behind them, and it's just baffling to me because they literally nailed it on the first season. They had it completely correct and perfect the way they presented themselves and set it up in that studio setting. It was perfect. And slowly as the years have gone on, they've just removed and undone everything that made NWA Powerrr so great, and it's got to us where we are now, where it's just soulless and lifeless and just completely lost its vibe. It just feels like any other indie promotion with a bit of editing, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I just can't stress enough. How did they nail the look of it 6 years ago and they just can't get back to that anymore? They've just undone everything. If you were someone who was really into NWA Powerrr Season 1 like I was, I just feel like there is no reason to keep watching and nothing that appeals to that viewer anymore, so it's no wonder that they're all gone. Yeah, this is what I mean about NWA Powerrr Season 1. I can literally yap about how good that show was forever and how much I enjoyed that show forever, and it's just sad that it's no longer like that anymore, because there really is still a gap in the market for a show like that, but they'd rather just do this and take the safe route. I'm sure some of it is budgeting, I'm sure that's probably the biggest reason for it all, but just sucks to see. Can't really say anything other than it just sucks to see, and it affects the show badly. Like I said, man, there's nothing witty, there's nothing funny to say. The show just sucks. It just sucks. And the final point to make, which kind of goes along with the last point I made, is that watching videos about the NWA is far more entertaining than watching the NWA itself, so I'd rather just do that than actually watch it and keep up with it. That may be one of the biggest reasons why I don't want to keep up with the NWA anymore. I'll just watch Marky D's videos. I cannot shout out enough all the other content creators that are just going through this miserable phase watching the NWA. I really do commend you, because my word, I was so miserable a lot of the time making videos about this product. There would be times where I'd sit and watch the shows and write my review for them, and when I'm done, I'm just like, what actually happened? What is there to make content about here? So yeah, a big kudos to any NWA content creators out there that are continuing to follow and review the show for the YouTube channels. Shout out to Marky D, of course, that's one I watch and know of. Any others that you know of, leave them down below in the comments, give them their shout outs. Yeah, not gonna lie, I couldn't really think of a fifth entry, so I thought I'd actually take the time to be wholesome in my videos for once, because why not? Let's be nice for once. But yeah, all that to say, what is the point in following the NWA week to week, watching watching the show, keeping up with it, watching hours of content, when I can just watch a 20-minute summary on YouTube which entertains me far more than the NWA product itself. That really is one of the biggest reasons for me, and I just wonder how many of you guys were doing that with my videos about the NWA. But yeah, those are the 5 reasons why I stopped watching the NWA and why I just have really no motivation to keep up with it or make content about the modern NWA product anymore. Like I said, there'll be videos I do about the NWA where I talk about the company retrospectively, but I just can't be asked to keep up with the company week to week. And I will say there's a lot of people in the NWA that I do really like. Kenzie Page, I've always been a fan of. Kylie Page, her sister, I also really like too. I think Thrillbilly is a good worker. I think Tom Latimer is good when he's given good material and good people to work with. You know, not feuding with Aaron Stevens over the world title in Big 2025, for example. But I think that's about all I really have to say about the NWA. Like I said, I'm not watching this show anymore, so don't expect to see content about the weekly shows. Just watch Marky D. If you guys did enjoy this video, then leave a like on it and comment down below what are the reasons that you have with NWA for why you may not watch it, or your biggest problems if you are still watching it. And let me know your thoughts on my issues as well. Do you agree or disagree? Sound off in the comments, brother. And like the video like I said, subscribe with notifications on so you never miss a video on the TTW channel. I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye and keep on rolling.